One of the core pillars of the Pokémon series is bringing old Pokémon back. Every single game does it, which makes it all the more surprising how rare characters coming back in later games actually is. The number of faces who have made appearances outside of their region of origin is shockingly low, especially in recent generations, which then makes it even more surprising that one of the names who has come back the most is Looker. Not Cynthia, not N, not Red or Blue, Looker has returned in more generations than anyone else, and for all intents and purposes, that feels borderline inexplicable. And at the same time, Looker is still yet to appear since the dawn of the Nintendo Switch. Suddenly, this guy who was a mainstay of the DS and 3DS era is completely MIA. How did Looker get so prolific? And how has he seemingly been forgotten so quickly again as well? Let's find out. And what is immediately always a bit of a trip to remember is that this super recurring character actually hails from a 3rd version game. Looker is essentially the Ucene of Sinnoh, the Skat of Sinnoh, but he is certainly a whole lot more memorable and I'd argue unique. From his very introduction, Looker represents a side of the Pokémon series we don't get to see too often. The mature side, the what do adults do in this world that appears to be so teenager focused. And as it turns out, the answer is that they have pretty serious jobs, like agent of the international police. And that our player character waltzing through evil teams every game doesn't mean that serious organizations aren't also trying to bring them to justice. During this third adventure through Sinnoh, we run into Looker on several occasions and learn more about his endeavors to put a stop to Team Plasma. 2 interesting traits or quirks about him are also introduced here that have stuck around. First of all, it's pretty clearly the idea here that Looker speaks in a way that appears to imply that he's not native to Sinnoh, or I guess Poke-Japan at that, as his grammar and sentence structure is definitely unconventional. What's interesting about this is that while it's unique to the Western version of the game, it's not in the Japanese original script at all, a character profile for Looker was leaked during the big Game Freak leaks of 2024, which mentioned that he is originally from Hoenn. It is possible this element of his character was understood by the localization team to mean, oh, so he is a native, let's make him talk odd. Well, in Japan, the idea was, okay, he's from Hoenn, he's just visiting, but both are Japanese regions, so he speaks the language just fine. Either way, in the West, his odd speech patterns were eventually dialed back as well, to the point that in X and Y they are completely absent. Also included in this profile are his age, which is coded to be 43, his height, 175 centimeters, 5'7", which is tall for a Japanese man of his age, and the fact that, seemingly from the very outset, he was intended to not be battleable, despite being, as the profile puts it, quite skilled. It also mentions his partner Krogogang, who is seen during the new post-game sequence, where Looker is on the tail of Team Galactic's new leader, Charon. It's also during this segment that we see the culmination of something Looker does frequently throughout Platinum: disguise himself. He goes undercover as a member of Team Plasma several times, and during the Stark Mountain part he disguises himself as a rock. Yes, a rock. Sure, why not? After the story truly ends, he can be found at the Veilstone Game Corner, which is where he remains until you boot up Pokémon Black and White. This game introduces the role for Looker that he would really get to call his own: the captain, the story pusher of the post-game's little narrative. In Unova, this amounts to capturing Team Plasma's 7 sages, for which he asks your help once you've completed the game. His first appearance here is actually well disguised as your mother, which is arguably even crazier than a rock, but it also speaks to Looker's incredible ability, seeing as the player character never realizes the truth. Anyway, as far as Looker appearances go, Gen 5 is definitely the lightest one, which is honestly noteworthy in its own right. It's one thing to have a smaller role after several games of being present, because at that point you're so well established and such a tradition, it makes sense to go underused a little. But here, Looker is brought back, which is extremely rare, only to not really do much. And he isn't in Black and White 2 at all, which is, wild as it is to say, the only non-Switch game since his introduction that Looker does not appear in. Even though for the vast majority of characters, it is the only game they return in, courtesy of the Pokémon World Tournament. That's what happens when you're not battleable, I suppose. But also, timeline-wise, it actually makes perfect sense. If we assume that all Pokémon games roughly take place in the year they're released in, then Looker's absence in the Gen 5 sequels is easily explainable when you keep in mind he is quite busy in Lumio City around this time. Black and White 2 and X and Y only released a year apart after all. Anyway, despite being a Sinnoh character originally, I would wager most people are familiar with Looker because of the Kalos games and probably associate him more with Lumio City than anything else. This is also the first time he has an actual place to settle down, his own Looker Bureau, and it is the first time ever in the history of Pokémon that a character appeared in 3 back-to-back Pokémon games, not counting remakes or Black and White 2, obviously. Never before had this happened. It hasn't happened since either, and what's arguably even more impressive is that none of the 3 can really be considered cameos. Maybe Black and White, but in Platinum and X and Y, Looker is undoubtedly story relevant. Now, I won't go too deeply into the nitty-gritty of his role in X and Y, I'm sure you're at least partway familiar with it, but the general gist is that he's here to chase after Sorosic of Team Flare, and once again, he is the king of the post-game, which revolves entirely around this girl Emma and her Esper Mimi that he found on the streets and is now looking after. Fun detail about the end of this sequence: Looker actually passes on his codename, which is Looker, onto the player character at the end of the game, although this obviously has no bearings on future appearances. And what also makes this a little odd is his Japanese codename, which is Handsome. Yeah, if you're a guy, this 40-year-old effectively declares you handsome. If you're a woman, well, then too, but it makes even less sense. It's also strongly implied that his partner Croagunk, which wasn't seen at all in Black and White or X and Y, has passed away, which would be pretty noteworthy. We don't see dead Pokemon in the main games much at all. That said, it should be pointed out that Looker's appearance in Pokemon Masters is strongly implied to be his X and Y incarnation, if you will, seeing as his Looker Bureau is his mind space and he references events from this game, despite his partner in Masters being Croagunk. Now, whether Masters is canon is a can of worms, but it's usually to be assumed that the events prior to Masters are canon, which would suggest Croagunk is not the dead partner X and Y are referring to. Or he has multiple, I suppose. Either way, we'll get back to dead partners soon, but first we need to talk about arguably the weirdest of all of his appearances. Why Looker, of all people, is in ORAS is basically impossible to explain. No one, literally no one, would have batted an eye if he hadn't been there, but for some reason he is one of the not that many changes ORAS makes compared to Ruby and Sapphire. This appearance is truly a cameo though, it's the first time he's not story relevant at all. Which I suppose makes it even more inexplicable why he of all people was chosen to get a new cameo, but alright. Either way, Looker has washed up at the battle resort here and suffers from amnesia. A woman then brings him to her cottage where he gives you the Megastone for Audino. That's it. That's his whole story. I told you, it's inexplicable. The only reason I can think of why this exists is that it is a tease for Sun and Moon, but if that's the case, then surely you'd think they'd use Annabelle in an interesting way rather than Looker. And why the Audinite? What is the connection between Looker and Audino? Is this meant to tie into his appearance in Black and White? I don't have the answers, and I wouldn't be surprised if Game Freak doesn't either. I really suspect this was meant as a setup or a hint towards events in Sun and Moon that eventually didn't end up happening. Because of course, Alola does have people appearing out of thin air with amnesia, except it ties them into ultra wormholes rather than, I don't know, the ocean? And what makes this whole thing even weirder is the fact that in Sun and Moon, Looker once again returns as a story-relevant character and king of the post-game, all with his amnesia forgotten about, ironically enough. He's on the island group to investigate the Ultra Beast alongside his superior Annabelle, as you probably know, and gets a lot of screen time as a result. Still no Pokemon to battle with though, that seems to be a core part of his character at this point. What this game nicely does is finally give Looker some backstory. After X and Y showed more of his personality, this was definitely still missing to give him a more well-rounded character, something a phase that is so frequently present surely needs. It is revealed that 10 years prior to Sun and Moon's events, which could actually be rather close to the events of Platinum, seeing as Diamond and Pearl released in Japan 10 years before Sun and Moon, and Platinum is a retelling of that original story, Looker formed a team alongside Nanu and another female partner under the codename 100KR to chase after Guzzlord. This female partner was a faller, and without her teammates' knowledge, was used as bait for the Ultra Beast, seeing as they are drawn to fallers, and was killed. It does certainly bring up questions about how close to the events of Platinum this really could have been, but it does potentially create an answer for the dead partner mystery that was created in X and Y. While this female faller is never referred to as a partner of Looker per se, she cannot be ruled out as a potential candidate either. In the Ultra games, Looker's role is significantly reduced again. While not as small as ORAS, I wouldn't say this one goes beyond a cameo, really. He first meets you near the police station, where he gives you a Thunderstone and hints at the existence of Team Rainbow Rocket, before then making another late appearance in the post-game alongside Annabelle, who he is apparently the bodyguard of now. Either way, this definitely feels like Game Freak didn't really know what to do with him in this game, but since he was already a part of the originals, they kept him in rather than cut him outright. Which is exactly what every game afterwards would do. Like I said at the start of this video, ever since the dawn of the Nintendo Switch, it has been incredibly quiet around Looker. Despite being seemingly inspired by famous British figures like Sherlock Holmes, James Bond and Doctor Who, Looker is nowhere to be seen in Galar. He was not added to the Gen 4 remakes like he was to the Gen 3 ones, and he also didn't show up in Legends Arceus, despite the fact that if you think about it, he makes more sense to be a victim of time travel shenanigans than Ingo. He isn't referenced in Scarlet and Violet either, which can't really be a surprise at this point, but his complete absence in Legends ZA definitely is. Even after it was made clear through the trailers that Emma would be an important character in this game, did everyone expect Looker to at least show his face in the city most people associate him with, but alas, even that was not to be. So what is going on here? How did Looker go from such a frequently appearing character to just disappearing into thin air? Well, personally, I think it has a lot to do with the role Looker was somehow given starting with Platinum. This game was really the first to introduce what has since become a bit of a staple, which is a short post-credit story sequence, an extra bonus episode if you will. Looker played a relatively big role in Platinum, he kicks it off in Black and White, and in X and Y and Sun and Moon it revolves completely around him. In ORAS he has more of a cameo, and the post-credit story is the Delta episode, but I firmly believe his cameo here was a setup for Sun and Moon that ended up not really working in the end. While his inclusion in Ultra Sun and Moon, like I just said, was probably more the result of, we can't really use him, but he was already here, so let's just give him something to do. Rainbow Rocket was the endgame story here after all. And all of Looker's post-game efforts have one core thing in common. It's about tying up loose ends in regards to the evil team. In Platinum, he's after Charon. In Black and White, it is Seven Sages. X and Y, he's after Cerosic, and in Sun and Moon, the Ultra Beast, which I guess are not an evil team, but they are threats to the region, no doubt. But starting with the Switch games, the role of evil teams was severely downplayed. Sword and Shield barely has one, there is no logical reason whatsoever why an international police agent would be roaming the region to hunt Team Yell or Rose. That doesn't work. In Paldea, same thing, the game doesn't even have an evil team if we're being honest. And while the Paradox Pokémon can definitely be considered a threat to the region, like the Ultra Beasts, their presence is handled more in-house rather than by international forces. And then I haven't even mentioned the fact that starting with Ultra Sun and Moon, Game Freak appears to have suddenly realized you don't need Looker to make post-credit stories. You can just use the existing cast, which is exactly what Gen 8 and 9 did, while also introducing new characters like Swordward and Shieldbird, terrible as they are. Purely looking at those games for what they are, it makes perfect sense that Looker isn't in them, even if you know Game Freak loves to bring him back. The real kicker, on the other hand, are the Legends games. I guess for Arceus you can make the argument that the fellow time traveler being someone not from Sinnoh adds even more weight to it, not to mention that Looker's perceptive personality may even be a bit of a bad fit, but ZA does feel like it really doesn't have an excuse. It's not like the game tries to scrub Looker from history, he is seen in a picture in his former office, but the fact he doesn't show up in the flesh is very unexpected and is a huge trend break with the pattern established in Gens 4 through 7. It's deliberate. It's the first time where Game Freak went out of their way to keep him out rather than introduce him, like they did in the past. The only reason I can think of why they would is to establish Emma more as her own character, and maybe she will end up taking over Looker's role as a recurring character. Who knows, she's popular enough at least. But Looker's future, it's not looking too good. What is a positive at least is that due to his frequent appearances in the past, there is a lot of potential for him to show his face in remakes and Legends games. You know, he could appear in Legends Alola or Black and White remakes, no questions asked. So I'm not saying he'll never come back, but I'm not expecting him in Winds and Waves, let's put it that way. Although, I guess that if truly evil teams ever come back, then Looker's chances shoot up again. And even if that doesn't happen, he will probably for a long time be the character with the most return appearances in the entire franchise. Hell, he is at the moment of writing the only character in the entire Pokémon franchise who is confirmed to exist in both Ash's anime world and the current Horizons anime world. After all, Ash has met him in the past, and his picture in Emma's office also appears in the Horizons anime. So even there, even in that medium, he is the king of returning appearances. Let's see if he can ever add more games to his tally. What are your thoughts on Looker? Do you want him back? And why do you think he has gone missing? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing. If you really want to support me, you can now become a channel member to get all kinds of fun perks and help me keep bringing these videos to your doorstep every week. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.